There is something almost absurd about consciousness. The universe existed for billions of years before human beings appeared. Stars formed, galaxies collided, planets emerged. Matter organized itself into increasingly complex systems. And eventually, on at least one small planet, something happened. Part of the universe became capable of noticing that the universe exists. You. Right now, you are not simply processing information. You are experiencing it. There is something it feels like to hear these words. Something it feels like to see light, to remember, to hurt, to love, to wonder. And despite everything neuroscience has discovered about the brain, we still do not have a complete explanation for why physical activity should produce subjective experience at all. Why should neurons firing create the feeling of red? Why should electrical signals create pain? Why should information processing produce an inner world? This mystery becomes even stranger when placed beside another unresolved question: quantum mechanics. Because at the smallest scales we can study, reality does not behave the way ordinary objects appear to behave. Particles are described by quantum states that encode possible measurement outcomes. Before a measurement, some physical quantities may not possess the definite values that classical intuition expects. Then an interaction occurs. A result becomes definite. And this creates what is commonly called the measurement problem. What exactly transforms quantum possibilities into the definite outcomes we experience? This question has produced multiple interpretations of quantum mechanics. And there is no universally accepted philosophical answer. But historically, a provocative idea appeared. Could consciousness somehow be involved? Before going further, we need an important distinction. Quantum mechanics does not require a human being to stare at a particle for physics to happen. In modern experiments, detectors interact with quantum systems whether anyone is watching the screen or not. Measurement in physics generally refers to physical interaction, not simply human attention. So the popular claim that your mind literally creates whatever physical reality you want is not supported by quantum mechanics. But that does not eliminate the deeper mystery, because eventually measurement information reaches consciousness. You see a result, an experience occurs, and now we have two strange problems sitting beside each other. Physics has a problem explaining how possibilities relate to definite outcomes. Neuroscience has a problem explaining why physical processing produces experience. Maybe they are unrelated. Most researchers would probably begin from that assumption. But some thinkers have asked, what if they are not? What if consciousness and quantum physics intersect somewhere deeper than we currently understand? To see why anyone would entertain such an idea, we first need to understand what makes consciousness difficult. Imagine building an extremely advanced machine. It detects faces, understands language, solves mathematics, recognizes emotion, responds intelligently, describes its own internal states. From the outside, its behavior might become almost indistinguishable from human behavior. But one question would remain: is anything happening inside? Is there actually an experience? Or is information merely being processed? This is the difference between function and experience. Science can increasingly describe functions. Which regions become active? Which networks communicate? Which chemicals change? Which signals correlate with awareness? But correlation does not automatically explain why any of this feels like something. You could theoretically describe every physical process occurring while someone sees the color blue. But where in that description is blueness? The experience itself. That is the mystery. Philosopher David Chalmers famously called this the hard problem of consciousness, not because every neuroscientist agrees with the framing, but because it isolates something that remains deeply difficult. Why is there experience at all? One possibility is that we simply have not yet understood the brain well enough. Perhaps consciousness emerges from sufficiently complex neural computation. Under this view, there is no need for quantum consciousness, no mysterious ingredient. The brain becomes complex enough and subjective experience emerges. That remains a major family of scientific approaches. But others have asked whether classical computation can fully explain human understanding. One of the most famous is mathematician and physicist Roger Penrose. Penrose questioned whether the mind can be completely reduced to algorithmic computation. From that starting point, he began looking for a physical process inside the brain that might operate beyond ordinary classical computation. Quantum physics became one possibility. Later, anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff proposed that structures inside neurons called microtubules might be involved. Microtubules are tiny structures forming part of the internal architecture of cells. They help maintain shape and participate in transport and organization inside neurons. Penrose and Hameroff proposed a theory called orchestrated objective reduction, often shortened to ORC-OR. The idea, in simplified form, is that quantum processes occurring in microtubules might contribute to conscious experience. In their model, particular quantum state reductions would correspond to moments of consciousness. It is a fascinating proposal. It is also controversial. Many scientists question whether meaningful quantum coherence could persist in the warm, noisy environment of the brain long enough to perform the role required by the theory. Others question whether microtubules need to be involved in consciousness at all. And existing evidence does not establish ORC-OR as the explanation for consciousness. That matters, because mystery is not evidence. When science cannot yet explain something completely, it does not mean any extraordinary explanation automatically becomes correct. But there is another reason quantum biology remains interesting. We now know biological systems can sometimes exploit quantum effects. For example, researchers have investigated quantum phenomena in photosynthetic energy transfer, bird navigation, and other biological processes. So saying biology is warm and therefore meaningful quantum effects are impossible is too simplistic. Nature can sometimes preserve or exploit effects we once thought would be too fragile. Does that prove the brain is a quantum computer producing consciousness? No, but it keeps the broader question interesting. Could some biological processes depend on quantum behavior in ways we have not fully understood? Possibly. And if consciousness eventually turns out to involve such processes, the implications would be enormous. But perhaps not for the reason people usually imagine. It would not necessarily mean consciousness is magical. It would not mean your thoughts control the universe. It would simply mean our current physical account of the brain had been incomplete. And that would not be the first time science discovered that a familiar system depended on deeper physics. Chemistry once appeared separate from physics. Then quantum mechanics helped explain chemical bonds. Biology appeared to operate on its own level. Then, molecular biology revealed the physical machinery underlying heredity. A deeper physical description does not make a phenomenon mystical. It makes the description deeper. But quantum consciousness theories become much more controversial when they move from quantum processes may occur inside the brain to consciousness may exist beyond the brain. Those are completely different claims. And this is where the conversation starts moving from experimental neuroscience toward philosophy. Quantum entanglement demonstrates that quantum systems can possess correlations that cannot be explained by ordinary local hidden variable models. This is real physics. But it does not follow that human minds are therefore entangled with the entire universe in a way that allows thoughts, emotions, or intentions to operate non-locally. That step is speculative. Still, entanglement teaches us something philosophically valuable. The universe does not always divide itself into independent objects as neatly as human intuition suggests. At a quantum level, relationships can be fundamental to the description of a system. That realization has inspired some thinkers to question whether consciousness might also be better understood relationally rather than as a tiny observer sitting inside the skull. Consider your ordinary sense of self. It feels localized. Somewhere behind your eyes seems to be you. The body surrounds you. The outside world begins at the skin. But neuroscience already complicates this intuition. Your sense of self is built from multiple systems: body awareness, memory, vision, emotion, language, attention, interoception. Signals from different parts of the brain are integrated into one experience. You do not normally feel like 20 brain systems. You feel like one person. This is sometimes connected to what researchers call the binding problem. Different features of an experience are processed across different neural systems: color, shape, sound, movement, memory, emotion. Yet consciousness presents them as one coherent moment. How? There are classical neurological explanations involving coordination, recurrent processing, synchronization, and network integration. Quantum theories propose other possibilities, but none has earned a final victory. And perhaps that uncertainty is more important than any single theory, because consciousness keeps resisting simple reduction. Every time we say, "It is just this," another question appears. If consciousness is information processing, why is information experienced? If it is neural synchronization, why should synchronization feel like anything? If it is quantum activity, why should quantum activity produce awareness? Eventually, every theory faces the same wall. Why experience? This is where some scientists and philosophers take an even more radical route. What if consciousness does not emerge from matter? What if consciousness is fundamental? In other words, perhaps consciousness is not something the universe eventually produced. Perhaps some primitive form of experience belongs to the basic structure of reality itself. This family of ideas appears in several philosophical forms. One related approach comes from cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman. Hoffman argues that evolution may not have shaped perception to reveal reality exactly as it is. Instead, perception may function more like an interface optimized for survival. Think about your computer desktop. You see a blue folder, but inside the computer, there is not literally a tiny blue folder. The icon hides an enormously complicated physical system: electrical signals, transistors, binary operations, memory addresses. The icon is useful precisely because it hides the complexity. Hoffman asks whether space, time, and physical objects could be something like that. An interface, useful representations rather than ultimate reality. In his framework, consciousness plays a much more fundamental role. But again, this is not established scientific consensus. It is a theoretical proposal, and that distinction becomes critical. Because once we cross the line between what experiments demonstrate and what theories attempt to explain, the imagination can run very far. For example, another interpretation of quantum mechanics is many worlds. Under many worlds, the wave function never collapses. Instead, every allowed outcome continues in different branches. There is no special role for consciousness causing collapse. In one branch, outcome A occurs. In another, outcome B. The mathematics evolves continuously. This interpretation solves some conceptual problems while creating others that are equally difficult to imagine. If every possible outcome occurs in separate branches, reality becomes unimaginably vast. Versions of events unfold differently. Different histories emerge. And consciousness exists in branches where the observer experiences each corresponding outcome. Some people then extend this idea toward concepts like quantum immortality. But this is where caution becomes essential. Quantum immortality is a philosophical thought experiment, not a demonstrated fact about what happens when people die. It should not be treated as a reason to take risks or as evidence of personal immortality. What makes many worlds interesting for our question is something simpler. It removes consciousness from the measurement problem entirely. No conscious observer is required to choose reality. All outcomes continue. This reveals something important. Quantum mechanics does not point to one unavoidable theory of consciousness. Different interpretations can tell very different stories. In one, measurement has a special role. In another, collapse is objective. In another, collapse never happens. The experimental predictions may often remain the same. The philosophical pictures underneath them do not. So when someone says, "Quantum physics proves consciousness creates reality," you should immediately ask, which interpretation? Which experiment? What exactly does "creates reality" mean? Usually the claim becomes much weaker when examined carefully. And yet consciousness remains. We can reject exaggerated claims and still face the original mystery. Why does anything feel like anything? You are sitting inside a universe governed by physical laws. Your brain obeys those laws. Signals move, molecules interact, neurons change states, and somewhere in that physical activity, there is an internal point of view. You. Maybe future neuroscience will explain this entirely through complex classical brain dynamics. Maybe some quantum process will prove essential. Maybe our idea of matter itself will need revision. Maybe consciousness will eventually be described as fundamental in ways we cannot yet imagine. We do not know. And perhaps "we do not know" is not a disappointing answer. It may be the most intellectually powerful position available, because uncertainty allows us to distinguish curiosity from belief. The problem begins when mystery becomes permission to claim anything. Quantum mechanics sounds strange. Consciousness feels mysterious. So people connect the two and suddenly conclude, your thoughts attract physical events. The universe responds directly to intention. All minds are psychically connected. Death is an illusion. Reality changes because you observe it. But none of those claims automatically follows from quantum theory. The actual scientific questions are already profound without adding anything. How does measurement produce definite outcomes? Why does the universe contain probabilistic structure? How does subjective experience arise? How does the brain integrate information into a unified field of awareness? Can quantum effects play a functional role in biology? These are real mysteries, and perhaps they all point toward a more general lesson. Our categories may be incomplete. Mind, matter, observer, observed, inside, outside, subject, object. We experience these as obvious divisions, but science has repeatedly shown that obvious categories can break down when we investigate deeply enough. Space and time once seemed completely separate. Relativity connected them. Matter and energy seemed like different things. Physics linked them. Particles and waves appeared mutually exclusive. Quantum mechanics forced us to use descriptions that include aspects of both. Perhaps mind and matter will eventually undergo a similar conceptual transformation, not because consciousness is supernatural, but because our current categories may be too simple. Imagine scientists centuries from now looking back at our understanding of consciousness. Maybe they will see our arguments the way we now see ancient arguments about what stars are. People once believed stars were holes in a heavenly dome. Others thought they were gods. Others imagined completely different cosmic structures. The observations were real. The models were incomplete. Maybe we are currently in that stage with consciousness. We know it exists because experience is happening. We know brain function is deeply related to it. We know altering the brain can alter consciousness. Sleep changes it. Anesthesia changes it. Injury changes it. Drugs can change it. Attention changes it. But knowing what modifies something is not identical to explaining what it fundamentally is, and this is why the question remains open. Is consciousness something brains generate? Something brains organize? Something brains access? Or is that entire framework mistaken? There is no final answer yet. But notice something extraordinary. Whatever consciousness is, you possess direct access to one example of it, your own. You do not know another person's consciousness directly. You infer it. You observe behavior, speech, emotion, brain activity. But your own awareness is different. It is the one phenomenon you know from the inside. This creates a strange asymmetry. Physics studies reality from the outside. Consciousness is known from the inside. And a complete theory of reality may eventually need to explain both perspectives. Not just what matter does, but why there is an experience of matter doing it. Maybe quantum physics will matter to that explanation. Maybe it will not. But even asking the question forces us to confront how incomplete our picture still is. Because the deepest mystery may not be that consciousness can influence reality. The deeper mystery is that reality contains consciousness at all. Somewhere inside a universe of particles, fields, forces, and space-time, there is experience, there is curiosity, there is wonder, there is a being asking what the universe is, and perhaps that is the strangest loop of all. The universe produced brains. Brains produced theories about the universe, and now those theories are being used to ask whether consciousness was ever separate from the story in the first place. Maybe consciousness is an emergent property of complex matter. Maybe it is connected to quantum processes. Maybe it is something more fundamental. At this moment, science cannot tell us with certainty. But uncertainty does not make the question weaker. It makes it larger. Because somewhere between the firing of neurons and the feeling of being alive, there is still a gap. And inside that gap may lie one of the deepest discoveries humanity has yet to make. Not whether your mind controls reality, but why reality ever became capable of experiencing itself.